So I run the only charity investment fund, Pronomos, and we are approaching the end of our 5-year investment period. So I've been taking this opportunity to think about like what we've learned, what ways maybe people should do things differently, like what to do different for the next iteration. So I'll just kind of share some of those thoughts. Um, and then happy to have Q&A or discussion. So one thing I found is that I I feel like we're so excited about L2s, meaning like let's say like Dunbar-sized tribes of people, people wanting to live together. And then there's been like a lot of kind of like commingling of ideas about starting L1s, meaning like a jurisdiction that has autonomy based on national legislation from a government, and then starting these kind of like smaller communities. And, one thing I've just been realizing is how different they are. So like working with a government and getting national legislation passed, like this is a heavy, heavy lift. And ultimately, I think like the product for something where you're doing the work to actually like construct your own legal system and have your own jurisdiction needs to be amortized over like lots and lots of people. Like I think it kind of like doesn't make sense to try to do that for I don't know, a Dunbar community of 150 people, or even like 500 people. Now, this like may change in the future, right? Governments might get used to doing this, and it might be like much less of a big deal to have a jurisdiction with control of some of the legal stack. But like for now, I think they're really different, and also like the skills are super different, right? So like starting um, let's say like a network state where the intention is to like gather people together in temporary gatherings and, move from conference length to pop-up length and then eventually open some like co-living communities and maybe have like a network of co-living communities. This is really all about like community building and like from what I've seen, starting in L1, like a charter city, it's like enterprise sales and customer building. It's like, are you having town halls or are you pitching sovereign wealth funds? And these are just like really different kind of like vibes that I think, there are extraordinary people who can maybe do both, but like in most cases, um, it's like a different type of person and a different energy. Like, are you focused on like living together with people of shared values or like structural reform of law and politics? And so I think that like for now at least the main role for these like L2s um is like to locate inside L1s. And there's like another way to think of it is like, is your business trying to like find a cohesive set of friends who want to live together and maybe work towards amazing goals like ending aging? Or are you like trying to find customers and coming up with customer hypotheses? Like to fill a city, um, I don't think we're at a place yet where we can fill like a city of hundreds of thousands of people with, some really tight like set of shared values and shared mission. Um, and, in general, I'm kind of getting like a lot more skeptical of building for like nomads or people from the developed world versus building for locals. And it depends on the size, but if you look at like Prospera, for example, the number of people living there, they've been operating for, coming on to like 5 years now, and the number of people living there is very low. And it wasn't really until this year, um, with the Vitalia pop-up that like actually got people kind of staying and Duna opening up. But it's like, whereas like our major projects right now are in West Africa, kind of like our fastest growing company called Alpha City. And in Africa, you have people like the average age in Nigeria is 18. So people are having lots of kids. They're still urbanizing and they live in a lot of low quality housing. And like I feel like the marketing and like the work necessary to get like 100 people in West Africa to move to a city is like the same amount of work to get like one person to move from like Europe to like Roatan or like another new community. So I think it's just, yeah, like we're seeing that pop-ups work to gather people, but it just seems to be really hard to get people to move places. And you're compete the thing about nomads, I feel like people focus on nomads as like, oh, these are people who can live anywhere, so maybe they'll come live in our like weird new place. But like people who can live anywhere can live in like the best places in the world for them. And that's who you're competing for. Whereas if you're focused on building for locals, it's like you're trying to do better than the country that they already live in, as opposed to like trying to be better than like the best places in the world that people could be. Um, and when you look at the reasons why people move, the number one reason is for economic opportunity. They move for jobs. Ideology, people move for ideology, religion, values. It's like 1% in the developing world and 7% in the developed world. It's like one of the lowest. And the number two reason that people move is family reunification. And so if you're trying to get people to go to like a new place, like, or a place across the world from them, you're going like uphill against family reunification, right? But if you appeal to say the diaspora, so like I think the next market segment that I would look at after like the locals, the people in that country, is maybe people in the region and the diaspora. The diaspora is a set of that is all the people who like left that country and moved someplace else, generally for jobs. That's a set of people in the developed world, often in the developed world, where like you're going downhill with family reunification. Like if they move back to their homeland in order to like live in your charter city, they're actually like doing family reunification. And so like in our strategy, I would tend to focus on things like the diaspora or like nearby countries. So our first project is going to be in the Gulf of Guinea area. And you've got like Nigeria, which has, a couple 100 million people, a lot of them highly skilled, and the government doesn't function great, the infrastructure is not great, they're struggling, and so drawing from places like that in the region, to me, makes a lot of sense. Another thing I've seen, and this is an issue with network state type approaches, is like the degree to which like if you're trying to do some things in the world of atoms and you're trying to do some things in the world of bits, like things in the world of bits are like so much easier and so much cheaper and go so much faster that it has a way of like sucking all the energy in a project that's trying to do both. And like this is why we do all kinds of amazing things in the world of bits, and it's wonderful and it's great. And if that's your intention, awesome. I'm just seeing projects where like they have like, okay, let's like form our tribe online, and and have our discords, maybe get together sometime, and also we're gonna like try to like move dirt and build a co-living community. And like I because it's like so much easier to join a discord than to move dirt, like in these projects I just see the energy, unless you're careful, just getting sucked all into the cloud stuff, which is the wrong thing if that's not your goal. Another thing we've been finding is like I feel like I'm changing my mind about the age for founders at the charter city level from like 20s to 40s, where like I had this idea that like, okay, I'm like gotten like I'm middle aged and I'm kind of tired, and like I'm gonna like be a VC, and all these like amazing young kids are just gonna like come and they're gonna build these cities, and it's gonna be great. Um, but now that we're doing Alpha City is like an incubated company. My business partner Bradford is the founder and CEO, and we've been doing it for a year. Is like, holy crap, is this hard? Like Bradford started 6 companies, a venture fund, a couple of hedge funds, has several exits, has done gnarly enterprise deals and regulatory stuff. And he's like, holy crap, like it takes all of that. Like this is so hard that it takes all of that. I had this like naive idea that like founders are scared off because it seems so intimidating because this is so ambitious to build like charter cities. But if we can just get the word out that it's like not that hard, maybe we can get them in. I'm just like cracking up myself. Like, no, actually, like it is that hard. And I don't know, I feel like in the world of startups, you can like never rule out that a 25-year-old will just like go big, go build the biggest company and like kick ass. But I think my presumption is now that this stuff is so hard that it takes a lot of experience, especially working with regulators and like large enterprise deals, because that's really what a country is. It's like a large enterprise partner. Um, One of my concerns about like pop-ups, there's this great line in the documentary on the first Ephemeral Festival. Ephemeral was like my version of a pop-up back in 2001. I was like, I want to start new countries and live under new legal systems, but nobody's gonna like go do that without having ever experienced it. So what if we got together for a week a year in like international waters and like actually like signed contracts to be under some different legal system? But international water is really hard. So we put it in the Sacramento Delta region, east of the Bay Area. And we were gonna like move to the Bay and the coast and offshore. And like 16 years later, it's still in the same place we started because the ocean is hard. Although I am now finally working with a friend on offshore ephemeral, probably like east of Florida. But in this documentary, Brian Doherty was like, when we did the first ephemeral in 2009, he was like, look, I don't see the through line from this like party to like new societies. And like he said that in 2009, and I feel like it like somewhat rings true today, that there's just a real difference between organizing for production and organizing for consumption. Like and and like a significant amount of my like business trips are like to pop-ups because I get to like do professional networking and like be around my tribe, and that's amazing. But I am like somewhat skeptical of how much they translate. Like, I feel like the type of people and the things that they're looking for to go live someplace permanently might be like really, really different. And like, I'm not saying pop-ups aren't like a useful tool. I mean, look at, whether it's like Vitalia, like some tens of people staying on and living in Prospera, or like Edge Esmeralda, where, Devin was able to like show the people in the city and county like what her vision was and learn from potential customers. I think like a small set of the people who went to Edge Esmeralda are like likely to like try to live in Esmeralda, but it's not none. So like I don't want to overstate this point, but I do think that we should be careful to like extrapolate from people going someplace for, weeks or even a few months and living there permanently. Okay, so I feel like that's enough points and happy to discuss.
Patri, we have words to handle discussion. I'm sure he has more to say. All right, thank you, Patri. So I will okay, how do I get in there? All right. Thank you for your awesome thoughts here. Love the Mickey Mouse in the background. And the cat. And the cat. Oh, hard pass. That's what you said
My favorite hat.
when I asked you to invest in Vitalia, you said hard pass.
L2.
L2, yeah. And you have not your focus, right?
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. But great supporter. It was great having you there. We connected more, and you did the gene therapy. The actually, I'll let
I
you.
got a chip. That's my scar for
Oh,
my
that
chip.
you're the
It,
chip. Yeah,
it unlocks my Tesla.
yeah, yeah. All right, so I want to have a bit of a interactive discussion with the audience here and you. So what's on your mind, folks? What do you maybe disagree with from what Patrick said, or what do you want to zoom into? You can pass it on the mic.
Hey, Patri, me here, can you see me? After the 5 years now investing into L1s, as you said, the autonomous or ZD like zones, what's your take on on changing the profile of your investment for the fund and starting invest a little bit with the balls and actually start funding the sovereign states like what we are building. Because I know that it wasn't in your profile until a couple of years ago, or definitely not, probably 2 years ago when we last spoke. So I'm just wondering if that is not on agenda, that you would go a little bit big and put a little bit more effort actually, not dealing with other governments, but building other governments.
Let me make sure I understand. What is the part of the thesis where you're saying that that I might change or should think about changing?
Most capital has not, as you told me, like you cannot help Liberland in any way because you're not investing in L zeros as part of your strategy, right? And I'm just wondering,
Got it.
you're not investing into L ones, you don't consider going a little bit
Right.
to having a little bit more balls than you have so far.
Awesome. I think I would invest in an L0 if I thought that, and like my goal is to invest in L0s in something like 5 to 10 years. Like I just think that that's where we're at right now, is starting these like L1s that plug in under a government. But I would invest in an L0 if I was convinced of the legal strategy, and that it was going to get sovereignty. And for me, like I want to be starting like Hong Kong's. So I want to start things where I can eventually be raising like tens of billions, like maybe hundreds of billions for them. And that requires that like legally it be absolutely solid. And I do think that an L0 could be absolutely solid, such that I could like pitch it to sovereign wealth funds and give them like a data room with all these like analyses of international law and like the reasons why, it's solid. But I think it would be a process of growing, like probably like plugging in under sovereign and growing and having that. I think of the stuff as software. So like the sovereign's like the wrapper layer, which lets you interface with international law. And that wrapper layer can be very thin, right? Like in, constitution and treaties, and it can be not much more than that. So I imagine like working with a country, maybe working with a territory that's thinking of breaking away and getting independence. There's about roughly like one a year, but it would be like a multi-year thing. And I would just have to like believe in the legal strategy. Fund 3.
Yeah, but I think we were kind of underestimating this element of sovereignty, right? If you don't ask anybody for permission, if you want to build something that is sovereign, right? Like, of course, you have to take into account the reality of the world, but like waiting until you get somebody to give you.
I'm not going to pitch GIC for like $1 billion investment on like we didn't ask for permission, except in as much as that's justified by international law.
Gradual process, right, in which you have to like build things up. It's not that the new countries are like starting by basically $1 billion deal one way or another. It's going to be very difficult to kick it off that way if you really want to go for a one. Nobody's going to just grant it to you based on $1 billion investment.
No, of course, it's a whole process of diplomacy. And like the way I see it is you go for recognition after you're at like the 20th percentile maybe of like population and GDP. Like you function as an actual country at the size of an actual country, and then you start getting people to recognize. But like, look, I don't want to diss like guerrilla strategies, right? Like I think it's totally possible that somebody might do a more guerrilla strategy and make it work. And like you're someone who has a ton of like hustle and determination. It's just that for my approach of being like an investment fund, and kind of I'm just like focused on like a different path. But that doesn't mean that mine's the only path. Like I don't at all think that.
You should consider diversifying.
All right. So, Patri, as you know, I'm now looking for new locations separate from Prospera, as we're separating as well, Italia. So, what locations would you, what countries would you recommend, and why, and whatever you can say publicly?
Yeah, I mean, we're mainly working in West Africa, as Bradford announced the Network State Conference. Our first country partner is Sao Tome and Principe, which is two small islands on the 00 lat long point of the world. Um, flight connections aren't great. Uh, like Lisbon twice a week right now, although they are like redoing the airport and that will improve over time. So that's we're gonna be building next year there. So that's, I think most likely to be the next location that opens up. Although, also Praxis with this, announcement of the drawdown facility and their event in the Dominican Republic. I think there's potential for that. The flight connections there are significantly better. We're working in some other countries in West Africa, including Cabo Verde, which has much, much better flight connections to Europe, being, much further north and a, popular tourism destination. Um, I think generally Africa has the most potential. There's also like, I think Latin America is also pretty good. I like
Where
Uruguay. Um, I think trying to do something in El Salvador is interesting. I think it's too early for Argentina. It's like a, Bukele second term super popular thing to try to do, even though I think it makes a lot of sense, but not now. Um, there's
Millet is confirmed, you mean?
yeah. Yeah, I mean he has to like fix the country, but I think there's a strong case for charter cities, like especially depending what happens with the Honduras arbitration case in the medium term. Um, but I think if you're looking just medical, um, that there's a lot more options than for the degree of autonomy that my projects mainly look for, like mini circles being delivered in Dubai right now, I think. Like there's a doctor who is doing that, I mean, Dubai is an amazing jurisdiction.
Well, you don't need a special economic zone to do all kinds of novel medical therapies. Uh,
Yeah,
there's
great.
already these happening in Bahamas and Dubai and so on. But to really scale up to the level that we need to get a handle on aging, we need to be huge, not just a few therapies, a few stem cells here and there. So that's why I think you do need that special jurisdiction, because then you have a community that has, like, it can decide its own destiny, and it's stable. Like Bahamas or Dubai, they might just change and be like, actually, you know what? You need to give us these other regulations and more. Like where it's not
Yeah,
just about money, right? It's if they would ask you for money, that's okay, but they also ask you for more paperwork and more bureaucracy, more
right.
slowdown, and that's what actually is the big issue for me.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I would just say, does it need to be now, right? Or like, can you scale within existing jurisdictions while hopefully the charter city movement like actually scales up? And it's like, on the one hand, like 5 years later, and we haven't gone from one to two. And heck, there's some chance we'll even lose the one. But I
Exactly.
feel like a lot more people are working with a lot more countries and getting like a lot closer. So it makes sense to me that you would want one at some point, but just in terms of scale, like a lot more people are willing to live in, you know, Berlin, Lisbon, than are willing to live in a new place. Like there's a way in which it can be anti-scale, even if it's like more solid. So maybe the correct is like a mixed strategy, right? Like you have a smaller number of people in charter cities, which are like more solid and trustworthy, but like a lot of your community is located in like normal jurisdictions because it's where most people want to live.
Yeah, yeah. So to clarify the strategy here, we're building this global network. First, we had online like VitaDAO, right? And then we tried out an experiment with a pop-up city like Zozalo. Then we built one in a special jurisdiction like Vitalia, right? And then now we're expanding the global network with in-person gatherings like Zelar.City and so on, where people are having a permanent hub, I think, eventually, so that in every major city you can kind of try out what it's like to live in one of these, maybe do a residency for 3 months to actually live there, not just co-work and so on. But then after those 3 months, if it's life-changing for you, and by the way, this is the big issue, the big thing, it's not just about nomads, it's about people that for which it's life and death, like this mission for them
Hmm.
matters, right? So
I would do anything to advance longevity, right? So just moving my house is not a big deal. Um, and so to clarify there, yeah, you're building these embassies in major cities as a way to kind of grow the community. Meanwhile, also building that special jurisdiction. And yeah, we might not need it now to do some clinical trials, but that's already happening. People are already doing all kinds of stem cells and all kinds of trials, but they're very, very small, and they kind of have to move around when the laws change. So it's important to start today in order to, in the future, have that big city where we have the autonomy. And to clarify, it's not just that I don't see it as, oh, you just need medical autonomy. Don't you think that if you only have medical autonomy, they can then block you on other points like, oh, construction permits or other kind of permits? Like they just, I feel like we need broad regulatory autonomy and civil law autonomy and tax policy and so on to really be able to scale a longevity city fast and to the size it's needed to do this moonshot of curing aging.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, look, it's really like an effort reward, right? Getting your own jurisdiction is like higher effort and higher reward, and you should like probably both scale up to the degree that you can in existing jurisdictions while like looking at where the smart bets are for having something yourself. Like I get that it's not really solid, um, unless it's charter city like or more.
Any other thoughts?
I would have one question related to what you asked, like where you would build the churches, the charter city, because you said like West Africa is the focus right now, and I was just wondering why not East Africa, just because they speak English, like there are people there that would do better in English. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about the stuff that's happening in like Zanzibar and Tanzania. It's just in our case, I have a really strong contact who I've worked with since 2011, who's close to the kind of all the former Portuguese colonies. He builds infrastructure across Portuguese Africa. And so having a strong relationship with somebody who has a strong relationship with with the ruling parties lets us skip, could easily be like a year of trust building. And so that's why we're only focused on Lusophone Africa to start. But that just happens to be because I have that unlock.
Yeah, okay. I thought maybe there are different regulations or another sort of thing. And the other question was because you said that you are evaluating right now like the investments of the past 5 years. When you look at this city like Alpha City, what makes it the most successful one for you? Like, is it the financials or is it the people living there or what do you?
Yeah. Biology has this great idea of graphs of like population, GDP, and land area. And, we think that, within the next few weeks or few months at the most, we'll have like signed the partnerships such that we're like, 20x the area of Prospera and, you know, like I think it won't be long till we have like 100x the number of people that's in Prospera right now. GDP, I'm not as sure. But like we've signed MOUs with 3 countries in our first 12 months, and there's one more country that's ready to sign, and we're about to get the first land grant and national legislation passed. So just in terms of like speed of moving from, concept to like national legislation passed, and then the scale of the amount of land and the number of people, it's just, literally 1 to 2 orders of magnitude above Prospera, but partly because it's a different market, right? We're targeting locals and not trying to get people to move there. And so there's just a lot more of those people. It's not as much the place that I want to build for myself to live. It's not my like Libertopia village with friends, but I think that's where product market fit is. And that's part of why we're able to grow so much faster.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
Patri. Oh my God.
Patri, last question.
How do you pitch new cities to governments?
Wait, was it pitching cities to government?
Yeah,
Oh,
pitching.
how?
How do you pitch?
Yeah. It's mainly about economic opportunity and jobs. Like we will help raise the standard of living in your country. We will build better houses. We will bring in businesses. Like in Sao Tome, for example, they were a top exporter of coffee and cacao until the Portuguese left in 1975. But the locals were they were not treated well and did not have high level jobs. And when the Portuguese left, there just wasn't much like business or managerial experience. And so those industries collapsed and the country's been poor ever since. So we're bringing in Brazilian coffee expertise because they also speak Portuguese, and we're gonna like revitalize that agriculture. And we think that we can employ like a significant percentage of the population, in agriculture. So it's kind of all about the benefits for their people.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm sad that you couldn't make it to Europe anymore for these conferences coming up. I will be in Prague as well. I remember meeting you for the first time in person. You were in a onesie with the cat ears in Prague. Everyone else was in suits. Love it. That's when I first fell in love. All right, just kidding.
Not fun.
With the cat in the background. Amazing. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
All right. Thanks,
Right.
everyone.
Right. Now we're going to do the last workshop. I need 5 chairs here in front. We can turn off the projector. We don't need this anymore.